Good evening, friends. Tonight, our story unfolds like a storm gathering on the horizon, slowly, unpredictably, yet inevitably. Across Russia, scenes of ordinary life twist into a reflection of something much deeper, a quiet tension spreading from region to region. The camera opens on the Afipsky oil refinery, one of those industrial giants that seem eternal, indestructible, yet suddenly, darkness consumes everything. Sirens wail, people crouch in the shadows, whispering prayers into the silence between explosions. In occupied Crimea, the night glows with anxiety. Homes lose power, streets empty. Somewhere above, a sound cuts through the air, a single, sharp whistle before the detonation. "Straight rocket," someone mutters, their voice trembling between disbelief and grim acceptance. The image fades. Then, silence. And while one part of the country hides in basements, another finds the courage to speak. From the cold corners of Sverdlovsk Oblast, residents of the small industrial town of Serov record their appeal to the president. "We live in emergency housing," one woman says, holding a letter with shaking hands. The walls behind her crack like dry earth. "Our homes are collapsing. We are forgotten." Her tone is steady but hollow, as if the words have been practiced too many times. The people of Serov don't ask for miracles. They ask for walls that don't crumble in the wind, for roofs that don't leak snow onto their beds. But in a country where complaints rise faster than solutions, their plea becomes just another echo in the void. The authorities nod, the papers pile up, the camera moves on. And where does the camera go next? To a grocery store shelf in another Russian city, where something strange appears for sale. Packets labeled assorted sausage trimmings. The label doesn't even try to hide the absurdity. Offcuts of sausage, swept from the production line, now sold as a product of their own. Shoppers stare, half amused, half resigned. "We don't know what this is," says one woman into her phone camera, turning the packet in her hands. "Maybe leftovers, maybe something new." She laughs, but the laughter sounds tired. Because deep down, everyone understands that humor is sometimes the only way to survive discomfort. Meanwhile, far away in Vladivostok, passengers of the number 55 bus sit quietly as their driver refuses to move. "I won't go until I finish praying," he says, standing at the front with bowed head. The passengers exchange uncertain glances. The clock ticks. 20 minutes pass, then 30. "We're late for work," one woman pleads. "Please, just drive." But the driver remains still, murmuring his prayer. The air inside the bus thickens with frustration and disbelief. Someone begins filming. Another calls the dispatcher. "Why are you calling?" the operator sighs. "Can't you wait? Let him finish." And so they wait. Because patience has become a kind of national art, an expectation, a habit, perhaps even a survival skill. But beyond the borders of patience and prayer, in faraway Washington, words twist in another kind of storm. A journalist asks U.S. Senator Marco Rubio the question everyone wants answered. Is Vladimir Putin a war criminal? The senator hesitates, searching for a diplomatic middle ground that doesn't exist. "Russia invaded Ukraine," he says cautiously. "They are the aggressor." But when pressed again, his tone falters. We aim to end the war." The journalist pushes once more, and the silence between their voices grows heavy. It's a silence that carries the weight of politics, fear, and fatigue. A silence that says, even across oceans, people are unsure how far truth can safely travel. And so, from the refinery in Afipsky to the frozen streets of Serov, from the absurd shelves of Russian supermarkets to the tense rooms of Washington politics, tonight's story begins not with answers, but with questions. Questions about endurance, about truth, and about how long a nation can balance between chaos and denial. The full picture, what lies beneath these fragments, will become clear in the next part. Stay with us, subscribe, and don't look away. The most revealing moments are still ahead. Part 2. As the first shadows of morning stretch across the frozen Russian landscape, the story deepens. What began as fragments of local chaos begins to reveal a single haunting picture of a country balancing on the edge of its own contradictions. In the aftermath of that night at the Afipsky refinery, officials speak carefully, promising stability and order, yet their words sound rehearsed, hollow. The people who filmed the explosions whisper about what they saw, the sharp light in the distance, the deep rumble that shook the windows, the way the darkness swallowed everything after the fire burned out. "It's fine," says one local man, his voice caught between sarcasm and fear. "They say it's all under control. They always say that." But control, as it turns out, is a fragile illusion, easily shattered by a single spark. In occupied Crimea, the silence after the blast becomes more dangerous than the noise. Villages stand without electricity for hours, sometimes days. Candles glow faintly in kitchen windows as families wait, listening for the next sound in the distance. Parents hush their children, telling them it's only thunder, though they know it isn't. Negative power supply, the official statement reads, a phrase that sounds more like a spell than an explanation. The truth, as usual, hides between the lines. Behind closed doors, people whisper that something larger is happening, something the government cannot admit. But in a country where information is filtered like water through sand, even the truth feels uncertain. Far north, in Serov, that appeal to the president gathers attention online. The video spreads across social media, its tone a mix of hope and desperation. "We are living in houses declared unsafe," the residents repeat. The camera pans slowly over peeling walls, broken staircases, windows sealed with plastic. Children's drawings hang above cracked radiators, their colors faded by cold air. The people's eyes reveal what words cannot say, exhaustion from decades of promises. The local administration responds with a short statement. Work is underway. But on the ground, nothing changes. The houses keep sinking, the people keep waiting. And when patience becomes the only available response, silence begins to feel like complicity. Then, in the midst of this quiet despair, another symbol of absurdity appears, those packets of sausage trimmings. At first, they seem like a joke, something that would disappear after a day. But they sell out. Shoppers post photos, laughing at the absurdity while holding on to the last traces of irony. "They're cheaper than bread," one woman comments online. Others respond with bitterness. "They'll sell air next," someone writes. The humor barely conceals the fatigue. It's the kind of irony that lives where hope once did, the kind of laughter that keeps people from crying. Meanwhile, in Vladivostok, that praying bus driver becomes a symbol of something even deeper than inconvenience. The video circulates rapidly, gathering millions of views. "He prays for safety," say some. "He's lost his mind," say others. But beneath the noise, the scene reveals a society torn between faith and frustration. The passengers, trapped in that bus, become a portrait of the entire country, waiting, unable to move forward until someone else finishes their ritual. "He won't go until he's done," one passenger mutters, "and we have no choice but to wait." The metaphor writes itself. In the heart of modern Russia, time stands still until permission is given to move. Beyond Russia's borders, the echo of this paralysis reaches global stages. Senator Marco Rubio's hesitation in Washington isn't just political caution. It's a mirror of the same fear that spreads from Moscow to Brussels to Washington. The question of calling Vladimir Putin a war criminal isn't only about law. It's about what comes next if someone dares to speak the truth aloud. The Western world, exhausted by war headlines, watches cautiously. Diplomats talk of peace, of negotiations, of the need to end suffering. But in Kiev the sirens still sound. In Kharkiv, lights flicker as drones approach. And in the quiet pauses between missile alerts, people ask each other the question that never leaves their minds. Will they ever stop? Inside Russia, the official narrative continues. Television presenters smile softly, speaking of temporary difficulties, unfriendly actions, and the need for unity. The words sound almost poetic, crafted to calm rather than inform. Meanwhile, on the streets of Saratov, hundreds of cars remain trapped on snow-covered highways. Drivers run their engines in short bursts to stay warm, fearing they'll run out of fuel before morning. There are no rescue teams, no supplies, no official response. Help is coming, the radio says, but help doesn't come. It's just another phrase, repeated until it loses meaning. Men step out of their vehicles, waving their flashlights in the wind, and vanish into the storm. For 12 hours, nothing moves. Only the snow does, falling endlessly, covering the stranded cars like graves in a white field. And then, as if to remind everyone that absurdity has no limits, 50 people in Tomsk gather in the cold to protest something the rest of the world barely notices: the blocking of roadblocks. Young faces, bright scarves, cardboard signs that read, "Hands off roadblocks." They chant not against war or hunger, but for the return of their virtual world. "Let us play," they shout, their voices trembling in the wind. And yet, this scene, half comical, half tragic, captures the truth better than any speech. When reality becomes unbearable, people fight for the small pieces of escape that remain. Even digital worlds begin to feel like freedom. Across all these stories runs one unbroken thread: a society drifting between faith, fatigue, and irony. From oil refineries to supermarkets, from political halls to frozen highways, the same question lingers in the air. How long can people keep waiting before patience turns into surrender? The headlines may change, the faces may differ, but the feeling remains constant. A sense that the country is holding its breath, waiting for someone, anyone, to exhale first. And yet, behind every fragment of despair, something else stirs. A quiet defiance, barely visible, but alive. In whispers, in small acts of humor, in simple refusal to stop talking. The story is far from over. Because what happens next, the hidden motives, the deeper consequences, the quiet resistance growing beneath the surface, that's what we'll uncover in the final part. Stay tuned, and don't forget to subscribe, because what comes next might change how you see it all. Part 3. As this story reaches its final chapter, the picture becomes complete, not through sudden revelations, but through the slow accumulation of truth. From the quiet desperation of the provinces to the uneasy calm of Moscow's polished avenues, a single emotion connects it all: exhaustion mixed with a fragile, flickering hope. The Ifipsky refinery, once a symbol of industrial power, now stands half in ruins, half in recovery. Officials claim operations have resumed, yet the nearby residents know that's only half true. They still wake at night from the echo of that explosion. The ground still hums faintly beneath their feet. The silence that follows is not peace. It is a waiting silence, the kind that carries questions no one dares to ask. In Crimea, the electricity returns slowly, unevenly. Some houses glow again, while others remain dark. The streets look like a checkerboard of light and shadow. People move carefully, speaking in whispers even when no one is around. "We are used to it," says one elderly man, standing beside a generator that hums weakly in the cold. "You get used to everything, eventually." But there is something in his eyes that says otherwise. It's not acceptance, it's resignation. The kind of surrender that grows not from defeat, but from too many broken promises. Official statements call it temporary inconvenience. But everyone knows temporary things have a way of becoming permanent. In Serov, the appeal to the president has faded from the news, replaced by new stories, new crises. Yet for the people still living in those crumbling houses, nothing has changed. Children still sleep under blankets in their coats. Old women still heat water on stoves that leak smoke. And in the evenings, when the wind howls through the cracks, the walls creak as if the buildings themselves are begging to be released from their burden. "We ask for help," says one resident quietly, but no one answered. The camera pans over the ruins once more, the same angle, the same silence. Because sometimes, silence is the only response that power gives to pain. Meanwhile, in Moscow, the rhythm of life continues with eerie smoothness. Cafes fill with soft music, snowflakes drift past the golden lights, and the hum of the capital drowns out the distant noise of hardship. Yet even here, the unease is palpable. People speak carefully, measure their words, glance over their shoulders in conversations that seem ordinary but are not. The television screens repeat the same confident phrases, the same carefully composed smiles. Everything is under control. We are united. We are strong. And yet the silence beneath those words grows louder with every passing day. Abroad, the world watches. From Brussels to Washington, from Berlin to Warsaw, political analysts dissect every signal, every phrase from Moscow. The war in Ukraine grinds on, relentless and consuming. Towns like Bakhmut and Avdiivka become symbols of endurance and tragedy, names whispered with both sorrow and defiance. In Kiev, President Volodymyr Zelensky speaks again of resistance, of hope, of the will to survive no matter the odds. The Western press publishes new satellite images, new casualty numbers, new diplomatic statements that sound almost identical to the ones before. The world spins in repetition, trapped between outrage and fatigue. And yet, within Russia itself, the contradictions deepen. On one hand, the government calls for unity and faith. On the other, it arrests those who dare to question. In one city, soldiers are honored for their heroism. In another, their mothers quietly protest the silence around their deaths. The official narrative insists that all is well, that the country is strong, that the people are proud. But behind closed doors, the conversations are different. In kitchens and on stairwells, people speak softly about shortages, about sons who never returned, about how long this can go on. "We're told to endure," one man says, pouring tea into chipped cups. But how long can endurance replace life? In Saratov, the snowbound highway finally clears. The rescue convoys arrive late, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Exhausted drivers step out of their cars, faces pale from cold and sleeplessness. "We waited 12 hours, a woman says quietly. "No one came." Her words carry no anger, only disbelief. The images spread online, briefly sparking outrage before being buried by the next story. The country moves on, because it must. Because in Russia, to survive means to keep moving, even when the path leads nowhere. And then there is Tomsk, the protest that seemed like a joke, 50 people shouting about roadblocks in the cold. The police arrived, the crowd dispersed, the headlines called it a small disturbance. But beneath that absurdity lies a kind of truth. These were young people, too young to have seen the old protests, too young to have lost their sense of what's possible. They held signs not because they believed it would change anything, but because they still felt the need to try. And in that small act of defiance, hidden beneath laughter and sarcasm, lies something fragile, yet real, the refusal to be entirely silent. Beyond Russia's borders, the diplomatic theater continues. Senator Marco Rubio's hesitation becomes symbolic, not of weakness, but of the global uncertainty surrounding this war. Every government seeks the balance between morality and strategy, between condemnation and caution. And while they debate, while they measure their words and their risks, people continue to die, to flee, to rebuild. The war has become both background noise and the center of everything. It shapes economies, alliances, futures. It lingers in every headline, in every whispered conversation about what tomorrow might bring. And yet, in the middle of this vast machinery of politics and despair, ordinary people continue to live. They wake, they work, they argue, they pray. They joke about things that shouldn't be funny. They light candles when the power goes out. They record videos, post them online, and hope that someone, somewhere, will listen. Their strength doesn't come from speeches or slogans. It comes from survival itself, from the simple decision to keep breathing through another day. Because behind every statistic, behind every headline, there is a human face, unseen and unheard. As the story closes, the final image lingers. A vast, quiet country under falling snow. Somewhere in the distance, a train moves slowly through the darkness. A light flickers in a broken window. A mother hums a song to her child, trying to drown out the wind. The refinery stands silent. The towns wait for spring, the highways clear, and the world keeps turning. But beneath it all, a question remains. How long can a nation endure by pretending that endurance itself is victory? How long before silence breaks and voices rise again, not in fear, but in truth? That moment hasn't come yet, but it will. Until then, the stories continue, the people wait, and the world watches. Stay with us, stay aware, and don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes the quietest stories are the ones that matter most.